All these features we've been looking at are great, but what really makes or breaks a 2D animation is the artwork itself. So let's take a look at the actual drawing features of Harmony. One of the big features that Harmony Advanced brings is bitmap drawing tools in addition to the standard vector drawing tools that come with Harmony Essentials. So what's the difference between vector and bitmap drawing, and why does it matter? Well, vector drawing means creating shapes and lines that are defined by points and curves. Different effects can be applied to those shapes and lines, but ultimately everything is drawn based on mathematically defined vectors. This is how programs like Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Animate work. On the other hand, in bitmap art, or sometimes called raster art, everything is defined in terms of pixels. Your image is made up of a certain number of pixels, and you use various drawing tools to put color on those pixels. This is how programs like Adobe Photoshop or Corel Painter work. So why use one over another? Well, the main advantage of vector art is that it is resolution independent. That means you can scale the artwork up or down and it will stay crisp and sharp with no pixelation. If you scale up a bitmap, however, you'll start to see the pixels and the image gets blurry. You have to make sure you draw the art at a high enough resolution for whatever you're going to use it for. Also, using vector art can make it easier to animate your characters using Harmony's rigging tools. We'll learn about those later on. The big advantage of bitmap art is that you can achieve more textured, nuanced, and expressive art styles. However, it can take a lot more work to achieve those styles. It's easier to make vector art look nice and professional, but it does have a tendency to come off a little flat and lifeless. Fortunately, in Harmony Advanced, we can mix and match vector and bitmap however we want. That's made possible by the Art Layers feature. Let's take a look. When we create a new drawing layer, we see we have a choice here. By default, every drawing layer you create in Harmony Advanced is composed of two art layers, a line art and a color art layer. And you pick whether each of those is bitmap or vector. In your preferences on the Advanced tab, you can enable an overlay and underlay layer as well. But let's keep things simple for now and leave it at just two layers. Most of the time you'll just have both of these be the same, and you might even not use both of them anyway. But let's say in this case, I want to have vector line art and bitmap color. Let me just quickly make some art here. Great, now that we've got some artwork, I can show you how to look at the different art layers. First, I'm going to switch back into OpenGL mode. You choose which art layer you want to interact with in this column over here. If you just want to see one or the other, you can go to the Drawing tab and then click this eye to let you see either both layers or just the one you have selected. The Camera tab will always show both. Now when I select one of these art layers, you can see the tools that are available change depending on whether it's the bitmap layer or the vector layer. I'll go into those style-specific tools in the next few videos, but right now let's talk about some key tools that are common to both. Our first item here is the Selection tool. On our vector layer, clicking selects individual shapes or lines, and clicking and dragging lets us lasso multiple objects. On our bitmap layer, it's just going to select the entire contents of the layer. It gives you a standard transformation box that lets you move, scale, or rotate whatever you have selected. Over here in our Tools property, down here there is an Operations section that lets you do things once you've made a selection. For example, you can flip horizontally or vertically, rotate 90 degrees, or move and rotate things by a specific amount using these options. There's also this section up here that gives us different options for how the tool behaves. There are some different snapping options here that affect dragging and dropping your selection. You'll just have to try those out yourself as you work and see what you like. This option lets you select all instances of a specific color. It's kind of like the Magic Wand tool in Photoshop, except it only works on vector layers and will select everything of that color even if it's not touching. These options change how your selection applies across multiple drawings. I'm going to quickly make some additional drawings on this layer. Great, now that we have multiple drawings, we can look at what these options do. This first option is permanent selection, maintain selection over multiple drawings. What that does is if I make a selection and go to another drawing, it will redo the selection as if I had drawn it on this frame. You can see on this drawing, the selection didn't actually catch anything, so nothing is selected. If I made a bigger selection, I would catch my baseball on all its frames. This next option is apply to multiple drawings, used to perform an action on all of the drawings contained in a layer. Now in the case of the selection tool, this doesn't seem to do anything. You'll see the same option on other tools like the fill tool, and in those cases it does work. It lets you perform actions on multiple drawings. But in case of the selection tool, none of these operations seem to work when I select multiple drawings. This next option is probably the most useful. Apply to line art and color art. Allows an action to be applied on all art layers. So by default, when you make a selection, it only selects the art layer that you're currently on. If this is selected, you can select everything. That's really useful if you need to move your artwork around. This last option here only applies when you have multiple drawing layers. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to duplicate this one. Now I'm going to turn this option on and select my baseball. Let's turn on this option as well. So if you have this option off, when you make a selection, by default it's going to select everything on all the layers. If you turn this on, it will restrict your selection to just the drawing layer that you're currently working on. So if you're trying to select something but other layers are getting in the way, you might want to turn that option on. You'll see these buttons on other tools too, so try to remember what they do. They'll do the same thing for other tools. So what if we wanted to just select a portion of a line or a portion of a bitmap painting instead of the whole thing? For that, we need to press and hold on the selection tool and get the sub-menu and select the cutter tool. With this, we can make selections that cut out a portion of the artwork. We have fewer options over here in the tool properties, and most of these are actually specific to vector art, so I'll go over them in a later video. But we do have our old buddy apply to line and color art. Again, that allows us to select both the line and color art layers at once. The last option in this selection submenu is the Reposition All Drawings tool. It does just what it says and nothing else. If you click and drag, or scale or rotate, or use one of these operation buttons, it does the same thing to every drawing in this drawing layer. So if, say, your background was misaligned, and you drew a bunch of drawings in the wrong position, you could fix it with this tool. Now for all these selection tools, keep in mind that we're modifying the drawings within this drawing layer. However, this transform tool, or these tools on the advanced animation panel, will transform the layer itself. Remember, these move the drawing, these move the layer. And if you're ever unsure about what you're transforming, you can always switch to the Drawing tab to check what the drawing itself looks like. You may even want to work on this tab instead of the camera view, depending on the situation. One last simple but essential feature, whether you're doing vector or bitmap drawing. You can use this tool to rotate the canvas area itself. This doesn't change anything, it just lets you make every stroke in a more comfortable position. You can also hold Command-Option or Control-Alt on PC to get this rotating stage. Great! Next let's look at how to import reference and art assets to use in our drawings.